So, as we look at the war that is going on now, I think of how scary it can be, because I have a boy about that age that could be going. We have some other young men and young women who are getting close to that age, and if things change, they could be going.
You talk about the draft.
Could be. And thankfully, we do have men and women in our church that can share with us examples of how God protected and led them. And so we want to take a moment and just ask some of them some questions for the encouragement and peace of seeing how God has led in the past and how he will protect and take care of our children and each of us now. So
we want to start with, we've both heard this story, but we want you to share with the congregation, what made you decide to join the service?
I was drafted. Actually, I was tired of school. I had graduated from Andrews Academy, and I was tired of school, and I sat down with my folks one morning, and I said, I'm going to go move my draft up, go do what I have to do. If I make it back, then I'll use the GI Bill to go to school, and nobody will have to pay a school bill if I get drafted in the middle of the school year.
what was one of the first encounters that you knew that God was with you as you were going through this experience?
I was at the induction center in Louisville, and after we passed our physicals and they swore us all in, the sergeant came by, and he started walking along, and he was tapping all the big guys on the shoulder and saying, "You're going to be a Marine." And having read the story of Desmond Doss in our school library as I was growing up, and then doing the program at Andrews for military cadets, I had registered for the draft as a conscientious objector, not objecting to serving my country, but I wouldn't carry a weapon and take another person's life. So I told the sergeant, I said, I can't be a Marine, knowing that from the training that I had gone through, when the sergeant said something, all you said was, "How high?" Because you didn't argue with sergeants. And he looked at me and he said, "Why can't you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a conscientious objector." I said, "I want to serve my country, but I won't take another person's life." And I was praying the whole time, "Lord, let me say the right words, because it's not going to be pretty if you don't." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, it's okay." He said, "I'll give you a week and you'll be carrying a weapon." I said, "No." He says, "Yeah." He says, they'll make a man out of you." And I said, "Sergeant, why are you going to put me in a situation that I will either be court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, or maybe even go to jail?" I says, "I can't do it." And thankfully, the Lord had a medic at the induction center that was overhearing this conversation. So he went and got the officer in charge of the induction center, and he walks in and looks at the sergeant and he says, "There a problem?" Sergeant says, "No." He looked at me and he says, "Is there a problem?" I said, yes, sir. And he says, what seems to be the problem? I said, well, the sergeant wants me to be a Marine, but I can't be a Marine because I'm a conscientious objector. And again, I said, I want to serve my country. When I told my folks that I was going to move my draft up, both of my parents said that they wanted to serve during World War II, but neither one of them could do it for physical reasons. But they understood where I was coming from, and they had raised me to believe in my God, believe in my country. And that's what I wanted to do. So the officer looked at me and he said, well, what do you base this on? And I said, well, I told him, I said, I believe in God, my country, and the desire to help my fellow man. But I also believe that I cannot take another person's life. And he said, well, where do you get that from? And I said, well, that's the way my parents raised me. That's what the Bible says. And he turned to the sergeant and he says, pick somebody else. He won't be a Marine. And I knew right then that God was on my side.
Can you share with us any other experiences or any other ways that God protected you while you were in Vietnam?
Well, he protected me. He brought me back home alive. Because I was 18 years old. I have to admit I did some foolish things. But he looked after me. And even when I was wounded, he protected me so that my wounds weren't so bad that I had a lot of physical damage from what happened. So, is that it?
Do you remember receiving anything special from home that reminded you of God's love?
Yes. I had a mother that she would write me 2 or 3 times a week. And she always inserted a package of pre-sweetened Kool-Aid. And I carried a 2-quart canteen with me, and I would put that package of pre-sweetened Kool-Aid in and shake it up real good. And it was a real treat to be able to drink it, or at least have the water flavored, so you didn't get the iodine taste and the other taste that you would get from the way they purified the water over there. And actually at night, even though it was jungle, I would wake up in the middle of the night and want something to drink, and I'd pick that up and it tastes just like it was coming out of the refrigerator. And I thank my mom forever for that thoughtfulness.
So we would like to encourage each of you, if you see a veteran or someone that you know have served, thank them. And then in tribute to those that are currently serving, reach out to somebody and share with them the love of God. Just send them something that might be a blessing from home and remind them that this is what they're serving for. The people here that do love and cherish what they are doing for us. There's a lot of men and women who don't have anyone, and so we just want to reach out and encourage and support them. So try to find a way to encourage them and thank a veteran. Thank you.
Well, I got a word or two to say, so give me a little space to the microphone. Y'all don't sit down yet. Mike and I served as Pathfinders for years, and y'all know that. Well, I got wind one day that Mike had First off, let me ask, are there anybody here that's a Purple Heart veteran besides Mike? I believe Ernie's, so hats off to you guys. That means you were what? Wounded during your service. Not just in your heart, but really wounded with some. So Mike, did you get that when you first got out of the military like most guys do?
I got the paperwork, but I never got a medal.
Never got a medal. And so we were Pathfinder directors, and Lisa, come up here just a little bit, tirelessly worked how many years?
2.
2 years calling representatives, writing letters to finally get Mike that award. And they let us know that they were going to give Mike the award. And I'm sorry I didn't dig up some of the pictures or we'd have shown them. Well, Mike was also on the fire department, which is just south of town, and he had a really nice dress uniform. So they made up this deal that, Mike, we're going to take pictures at the fire department, and we're going to have everybody in their uniform. So the captain, and what role did you play there? Were you like?
I was the treasurer, and we were buying a new tanker for the fire department, and I had to go in and sign the papers for the tanker. So we come in, and they said, come on in the office, this is where we're gonna be. So I go in the office, and we signed the papers, turned around, walked out into the bay where all the trucks were, and all of a sudden there's all kinds of people.
Lots of people.
Lots of people out there.
Some state representatives and
I'm thinking, what is going on? And I hear this, there he is, and I turned around and our congressman
right.
walked up to me and shook my hand, and I'm thinking, I don't understand what's going on. And he proceeds to explain to everybody that he was giving me my Purple Heart. This was 20 some odd years after I had come back from Vietnam.
So proudly we got to stand there with Mike as he got that. But then, you know, my family dedicated some land on the Greenway. Have y'all seen the Veterans Memorial Park? Yes. And that was dedicated because my stepfather was a decorated Purple Heart veteran as well, Mr. Irwin, and nobody in White House would know it. So we dedicated it to all of the veterans that have served. So if you haven't got a place, you can go there to that Greenway. And so Mike and I got to go there the morning we dedicated that, and we stood there proudly in our Pathfinder uniforms as our city accepted that. And there was a tree planted and a plaque laid there from World War II. You remember that family? They had never had a place in White House to honor their fallen soldier. And so we have a place for us to tie yellow ribbons. But my mom and I and Donnie and Carol and John, we all gave that property gladly for the Purple Heart veteran. I mean, for the veterans, and it's to all the branches. So Coast Guard including, and I got to tell a little lady at the doctor's office the other morning, she'd served in the Coast Guard, and so she was glad. But it's to all the veterans. Now, we just went through a funeral in my family, Miss Mylan, and she's the funeral director up at Austin and Bell, and her son is in a wheelchair and has been all of his life. And he was working on his Eagle Scout honor, and he took that as a project to take it from raw land and turn it into a veterans park. So if you see that young man's name on the plaque, Mylan, he's in a wheelchair, and he'd be down there pulling those trees, and his troops would be there working, but he worked in a wheelchair, and that ground wasn't smooth and level like it is now with the sidewalk, and he'd be down there working. So my hat's off to the veterans too, Mike, and it's been a pleasure to serve with you. Not only that he served in the United States military, but he served many, many years as a Pathfinder director as well.
One thing about the trees down there, if you go down and look at them, there's 2 rows perfectly straight, like soldiers standing at attention.
You know, when they took the Greenway from our family, they bought it. But I bought 1,500 trees, and I had my Pathfinders come and help me plant them. And Corey France helped me. And I've had young men come back, and they'll say, I'll stand by those trees. And they were just little slips, you know. And we planted them, and now we have a canopy in our part of the Greenway that goes like this, and it's all shaded. And so those trees, we planted them in grass this deep, and we had no idea what we were doing right there at that foot, and I ended up with all one kind of tree. I'd run out of the variety because I had 4 different varieties, but all those trees are one variety of poplar, and they are set. Those kids set those things just like they're a battalion of men ready to go to service. So notice that the next time you're down there. Terry Ann? It's your time.
Is it my time?
Yeah. You know me, I'll talk all day. You come on up here.
Well, Mike, I'm not a veteran, but my testimony is somewhat similar. I got baptized in the Adventist church at the age of 16. I'm second born of twins. My sister is serving. She's back home in the military. But we both decided that we wanted to be a part of the Adventist church, and we decided at the age of 16, which we were still in our youth. My mother did not stop us, even though she wasn't an Adventist at that time. So about a year after that, we were graduating high school, and my mother did not have the funds for us to go to college. So here we were thinking what we were going to do next. And so at that time, the government was offering programs, to those who did not have the funds. We would have to serve, and then at the end of service, you could get help with your tuition if you wanted to. So my sister and I decided that we were going to go. We had to leave home for a month, and we had to go to a camp that was run by officers. So it was all military, and they did all the training and everything. So here I was, my sister and I, on a bus, and we had to meet at a spot and picked up all the young people that were interested and wanted to go. And we traveled on a bus, and we arrived at the campsite. And when we arrived at the campsite, you had to get off the bus, and here were soldiers everywhere, and all we could hear was shouting and yelling. You had to move as fast as you can, get off the bus, and all of that. And they were like, get in line, you got to line up and everything. And I said, in my heart, I said, Lord, what have we gotten ourselves into? And we stood in line. We had to get our bags checked and everything, and we had to get to our dorms. Everything was on time. You have to be on time for everything. But thank God for Pathfinder. We were in the Pathfinder Club, so it was. And Pathfinder Club is back home is paramilitary. I don't know if it's the same here, but it acts as a paramilitary unit in my country. So it was a little bit easier for us because we were in the Pathfinder Club. So the marching, the moving, the movement, the beds, the setting of your bed, you could not have a wrinkled bed. Your shoes had to be in order, even when you hang your clothes, the hangers couldn't be one way or other way. They had to be straight. So I said, Lord, thank you for that. But the thing about it is that when we got there, we started praying, because when I saw those military officers, I knew that there was going to be some obstacles in terms of the Sabbath. And I said, Lord, you will have to help us through this. And so learning from pathfindering and being in the church, we were always taught that there's strength in unity. And so we started to look for other young people who were Adventists. And we did find them. They were youths because there were hundreds of young people on this camp, but we did find other young people who were Adventists. And we came together into what you would call a fraternity, a group. We came together as a group, and it helped us to stand against anything that we were not that we would come up against. And so one of the things was Sabbath, and even though you were given the opportunity to worship, you were not prevented from worshiping. For us, the Sabbath would be a challenge because they did everything on Sabbath. And so when we came together, we huddled and we discussed and prayed. You know, it was like Daniel and his 3 friends, you know, to us, because we completely found ourselves in a lion's den. And I mean, other people were there, but they were doing what they were used to doing. But we know as Adventists, we have a belief system. And so we came together. I did speak to the superintendent, the officer in charge, and we did go to him respectfully, and we let him know what our beliefs were, and that we did not do, you know, these things from this 24-hour of time, and it begins on Friday evening. Praise God, he did not have an issue with that. So we were able to do our Vespers on Friday evening while everyone else was doing what they were doing. And then we were able to keep Sabbath worship. We had the whole day, and we planned worship for the entire day, just like we do now, straight up to Vespers. It did give us an opportunity to invite other young people to our service, and that was good. It was a good witness. There were other young people who did keep Sabbath, but they were not Adventists. They were Sabbath keepers, but they were not Adventists. And so they came to our worship. And so we went through training, and God was with us there. We were, where I was posted after service, I was posted to serve in a furniture store as a clerk. Now, you had to do 9 months of service, and then at the end of your 9 month, you would get your, you know, you could get your tuitions and everything after 9 months. But when I was placed in a furniture store as a clerk or a sales associate to serve. I was there for about 3 months, and then here comes the Sabbath issue again. I overheard my friends talking about they were going to make us work on Sabbath, and so they kept asking me, what are you going to do about that? I said, I'm not going to do anything about that. I'm not working on the Sabbath. And so in the following week, there was a meeting. The meeting was kept, and everyone was at the meeting, and they were, you know, at the end of the meeting, the supervisor said, well, we're going to, you know, all of you are going to have to pick up the work, and you're going to have to work on Sabbath. Brethren, by the time she said the Saturday did not fall from her mouth. I had my bag on my shoulder, and I turned around, and I was heading through the door. And my friends were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm leaving because I'm not working on the Sabbath. The room was quiet all of a sudden. You could hear a pin drop, and all eyes were on me. And the manager said, what are you doing? I said, I am leaving because I am not working on the Sabbath. And she went on to say how much of the benefits and how much I'm giving up and all the stuff. And I said, ma'am, even if you're giving me $1 million, I'm not working on the Sabbath. And my friends were like, but are you going to give all this up? I said, yes, I'm not working. So I took my bag and I came down the stairs, and I was about to step through the door. And brothers and sisters, I heard the voice in my head, and it reminded me of 1 Samuel 2, verse 30. I will honor those who honor me, and those who despise me, I will lightly esteem. And before I opened the door and I stepped, because the store was on a sidewalk, so before I could step on the pavement, because I was going to go across the street, my phone rang. And my sister called me and she said, where are you? And I said, I've quit because I'm not working on the Sabbath. And I did tell the director of the program that I wouldn't do it. And she said, don't worry about it. She said, Dr. Patrick Hickey needs a secretary. And she said, go to his office and do the interview. I went to his office. I did not do any interview. He said to me, can you start right now? And I said, yes, I can start. I said, but I'm not working on Saturdays. And he said, no problem. You can take the whole weekend off if you want to. And if you schedule me right, then you can have half a day off. And I said, okay, I can start immediately. And brethren, God will honor those who honor him. He provided a job for me, and I was a secretary in a chiropractor's office that same day. And I did get, at the end of the program, God made the way for me to still get the tuition.
Amen. Praise God.
And I would just like to encourage our young people, because I was about 16, 17 years old. But when we honor God, when we stand up for God, God will stand up for us. When God will fight our giants, he will fight our Goliaths of a problem, whatever the situation may be. And as young people, we do face challenges. We do face these issues where we have to stand up. And sometimes we do have the peer pressure. But I always say to myself, if I don't stand for something, I'm going to fall for anything. And so I have to stand up for something. I have to make a stand for myself. And you will have the peer pressure. Your friends will be like, what in the world you're doing? But you've got to make that stand for yourself. So I'd like to encourage my young people. I have been working with the youth class, and I would just like to encourage you all, just stand up for Jesus, and he will stand up for you.